Hello, beautiful people. So today I have a really interesting one called Sexuality and the Kingdom of Life, the truth about the gay gene. And I want to thank one of my friends, Keegan, for giving me this idea. And I have to give him credit because it really is a brilliant idea and it encapsulates everything that I think my channel is about, which is controversial topic on the edge of philosophy and science that also touch on things that I'm interested in, for instance, complex adaptive systems. And this topic touches on everything: science, philosophy, human culture, and it's just a great topic. So I had to give him credit. So I want to start out showing that this is a real topic that is being researched and people are publishing articles about. So I have these three articles that you can look at if interested in, and you can look at the references and keep on reading so you can learn more about this if that's what you want to do. So it's called Emergent Insights into the Genetics and Evolution of Human Same-Sex Sexual Behavior. I was born this way. New research confirms that a mix of prenatal factors and genetic differences could explain human sexual orientation, and the evolutionary enigma of homosexuality, unraveling genetic, epigenetic, and social dilemmas. And I'll talk about the genetics and epigenetics in the following slides. So, what if everything you've been taught about sexuality is only a tiny piece of a much bigger story? Across the tree of life, from mammals to fish to sea slugs, sexuality isn't fixed, binary, or even always reproductive. It's fluid, adaptive, and deeply embedded in evolution itself. So, where does human sexuality fit into this? And you can see in this picture that I pulled off the internet that many different animals do different sexual experiences as a part of their life, and it's not just humans that do these different things. So throughout the whole, and this isn't a comprehensive list, throughout the whole kingdom of life, you have different sexual encounters that are happening, and I'll give you examples in the following slides. So the myth and reality of the gay gene. Is there a single gay gene? No, there's not a single gene or mechanism. Sexual orientation appears to be influenced by a complex combination of genetic, epigenetics, hormone exposure, and the environment. Large-scale genetic studies show that there is no single gene that determines sexual orientation. Instead, there are many factors interacting together. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes sense. And it does make sense because it's obviously more complicated than a single gene because it's complex. And I think everybody should know inside, if you really are truthful and honest about yourself, that it is a complex topic. When it comes to sexuality, people are interested in a wide range of things. And there's a reason, there's a biological reason for that in evolution, and it's because the society, the whole species is acting as a complex adaptive system. So our behaviors or to increase the survival of our species. And sex is not just about reproduction, it also has other things that can benefit us. If same-sex behavior exists across generations and across species, it's unlikely to be a mistake. Instead, it may serve indirect evolutionary roles like strengthening social bonds, reducing conflict, and supporting group cohesion. And I'll give you examples of this in the animal kingdom about our closest relatives. So instead of asking why does this happen or why does this exist, a better question is what role does it play? And when you're asking these questions, it's better to look at this not from a gene perspective, but from a complex adaptive systems perspective. You can't just look at one molecule that makes up all of life on Earth. You have to look how all the molecules are interacting together and what mechanisms arise and emerge from all of those interactions. So if you want to know more about that framework, you can look at one of my recent papers called Chaos to Coherence, A Path to Molecular Organization, and that's in the first edition book, Quantum Mechanics of Biological Systems. And I've shown you right here a figure from that paper, and it explains how complex adaptive systems can be used to think about life on Earth because it implements genetics and epigenetics into this framework, which creates emergent networks of agencies that we can see in protein and nucleic acid condensates and cells and organisms and colonies and in all the ecosystems. The ecosystems which are made up of groups of species living together in harmony. And they're made of the individual agents like DNA, RNA, protein, sugars, lipids, etc. So moving along, same-sex behavior isn't uniquely human, it's everywhere. Over 1,500 species have documented examples of it. For example, dolphins form long-term same-sex bonds that are deeply social and cooperative. Penguins have been observed forming same-sex pairs that even raise chicks together. Bonobos, one of our closest relatives along with chimpanzees, use same-sex interactions as a primary way to reduce tension and maintain peace. In many species, sexuality isn't just about reproduction, it's about communication, bonding, and social structure. And I have provided here a spectrum of sexuality from heterosexual and to exclusively homosexual. And just to go over what that means and put it in some real world terminology for you, because I want us to be honest about this. Because one thing that some people told me they want me to address is homophobia. And I think that for the most part, homophobia is almost like um a front. Because what you'll find is, in my opinion, from interacting with males in society, is that you'll have very little pure heterosexuals. And why is that? Because even pure heterosexuals that I've talked to, they do like some homophobic interactions. For instance, they might not like to see two other males involved in homosexual bonding, but then when they go to the strip club and they see two females kissing or something, they might pay money to see that, to see more of that. So they like it. It's just they like their own flavor that gives them pleasure. So they like curry, but they don't like spicy curry. They like the sour curry or maybe the neutral tasting curry. So it's just about their preference. But in the end, they still do enjoy some homosexual interactions. So that's, in my opinion, that's not, and I think it's logical, that's not purely and exclusively heterosexual because they do like some homophobic interactions. And we'll talk about this in other species in future slides. So sexuality as a spectrum in nature. Now it gets even more interesting. Some organisms don't just vary in orientation, they change sex entirely. For instance, clownfish can switch from male to female when the dominant female dies. Wrasses, which are these fish right here, can change sex based on social hierarchy. And this diagram right here shows you how their gene expression can change based off that social hierarchy. Many sea slugs, shown in these two pictures at the bottom, are hermaphroditic, meaning they possess both male and female reproductive systems at the same time. So many of them can have sex kind of in a line, one taking and one each receiving and taking at the same time. So in these systems, sexuality is not fixed, it's responsive to the needs of the group. This tells us something profound. Biology does not enforce rigid categories. It favors flexibility when it improves survival. Therefore, the species is functioning as a complex adaptive system. So different roles are being held by members of the species to increase cohesion of that species, which increases the survival of the species as a whole. And we'll get into this with bonobos. So why isn't this common knowledge, since it's a fundamental way that humans behave and animals in the animal kingdom behave? Well, it's because human discomfort and cultural blind sides. If this diversity is everywhere in nature, why do humans struggle to accept it? Part of the answer is cultural discomfort. Sexuality is deeply personal, emotionally charged, and often tied to a moral system. That makes it hard to talk about. A striking example is how we portray our closest relatives. Chimpanzees are often highlighted in media as our primary evolutionary comparison, competitive, hierarchical, and male dominating. But bonobos are just as closely related to us, yet they're far less discussed. Why? Because bonobo society is openly sexual. And you can see right here, about 4 to 6 million years ago, humans branched off from bonobos. And you can clearly see this if you compare genetics. So even though they both bonobos and chimpanzees. So about 4 to 6 million years ago, humans and then the ancestors that eventually made bonobos and chimps both branched off, and then after that is when bonobos and chimps branched off from each other. So that's why they're both just as closely related to us. So their behavior, the bonobo behavior, challenges human norms, so it's often minimized or ignored. And chimpanzees are led by males and bonobos are led by the females. So throughout history and culture, that's why humans, society and the media wanted to focus on the chimpanzees, because we related to them more. But really, we related to both of them. It's just it wasn't easy to accept how we related to the bonobos. So let's get into that. Bonobos versus chimpanzees, two models of society. The contrast between bonobos and chimpanzees is fascinating. Chimpanzees are male-dominated hierarchies, frequent aggression and territorial conflict, power maintained through force. Bonobos are female-led social structures, high levels of cooperation, conflict resolved through social and sexual bonding. So that's important right there, that conflict in the bonobo societies or resolved through sexual and social bonding. So this is true that the female-led bonobos, when they would have conflicts, instead of being violent, the two females would engage in bonding and sexual experiences. So, and then that would increase the cohesion between the two tribes or groups of bonobos. And if you think about it in the similar way that males might enjoy at a strip club seeing two females interact with each other, I'm sure the bonobo males in those groups would also see their two leaders involved in bonding, and they would probably like it, and they would probably get less violent, and so this would lead to less wars and battles and violence, and would increase the cohesion of the groups, which would increase survival and decrease death in the species. So that is how it plays a role in evolution. So to continue, in bonobo societies, females form strong alliances that stabilize the group. Violence is rare and social cohesion is high. This isn't to say that chimpanzee or bonobo societies, one is better than the other, but it shows that biology allows for radically different social systems, even among closely related species. And just to prove to you that this really does happen and show you a picture, I have two male bonobos that are socially or emotionally and sexually bonding with each other in the same way that the females do to increase the group cohesion. So what this means for humans. Human sexuality, like in other species, is complex, variable, deeply individual. Every person represents a unique combination of biology, development, and experience. And because of that, people deserve the freedom to understand and express their sexuality and everything authentically. But there's an important balance. Expression should be informed, safe, grounded in reliable science. For example, when it comes to irreversible physical changes, it's critical that long-term safety is well understood. Effects across diverse genetic backgrounds are studied, and decisions are made with full awareness of risk and benefits. So what I'm trying to say here is that we need to be very smart when we're deciding to change something about our physical being to help us accept our sexuality. Right now, I think it's better just to accept the our sexuality as it is before we try some drastic physical changes. And that's because I don't think science has gotten there yet. And to give you an example, even when you, and this is just a supplement you use for your health. Right now, magnesium glycinate is very popular and people are using it. And this is just magnesium. You can find it in a lot of fruits and vegetables. People eat it all the time. People take different forms of it in different supplements. But we should even take that seriously because it can have drastically negative effects if you have certain genetic predispositions, or if you have certain diseases, or if you're on certain medications, it can have a negative effect and you'll have a negative experience. And we're just talking about magnesium. So when you're talking about trying to change something that's going to change your behavior and maybe your sexuality, you're talking about hormones or major surgeries. That's a drastic change, even more drastic than something as simple as magnesium. And even magnesium can have a drastic effect and have negative side effects. So we need to take these things seriously. We need to evaluate them in a wide range of different genetic populations, and we need to understand how they work before we try to implement them in society. We need to be honest, we need to be smart. So respect for individuality and respect for biological complexity should go hand in hand. So the take home for this is the deeper we explore nature, the clearer the picture becomes. Sexuality isn't a rigid rule book. It's a dynamic system shaped by evolution, the environment, and social needs. From dolphins to bonobos to humans, it plays a role far beyond reproduction. Understanding sexuality isn't about forcing simple answers, it's about embracing complexity. And I think in the future, we'll look at nature and evolution and all the different parts of biology as complex adaptive systems, and that's going to lead to better treatments, better mental health, and just a better society. So I hope you enjoyed this one and you have a wonderful day.